So today on my Facebook page, we talked a lot about the word dear and the word sir. And I made it very clear that I do not like it when people call me sir. Or at least I don't like it when my social media followers call me sir. And if you want to know why, you can go read that post on Facebook. But what I want to talk about right now is two other questions that people are now asking. And those questions are, what should you call a teacher? And what should you call me? Because I'm not really a teacher. You aren't children, and we aren't in a school. So let's go ahead and talk about this. What should you call a teacher? So there's no rule here, because it's different in different schools, it's different in different countries, it's different depending on what that teacher wants you to call them. So let's do this. I'll just tell you a little bit about what we usually do in the United States, and then I will tell you why that really isn't even important. So in the United States, we have public schools and we have private schools. Public schools are free, private schools are very expensive. If you go to a public school, your teacher will probably ask you to call them Mr. or Ms. or Mrs. plus their last name. So if your teacher's name is John Smith, you would probably call your teacher Mr. Smith. If your teacher's name is Sarah Johnson, you are probably going to call her Ms. Johnson or Mrs. Johnson. They are probably never going to ask you to call them sir or ma'am. And then we have private schools. I've never been to a private school, so I can't tell you about every private school in the United States. However, my mom has worked at many private schools, and she has told me that in some, it's the same as public schools. You usually use Mr. or Ms. or Mrs. plus last name. However, in private schools, there are also many teachers who ask the students to use their first name. So, if your teacher's name is John Smith, they might just ask you to call them John. If your teacher's name is Sarah Johnson, they might just ask you to call them Sarah. The people who teach at universities are called professors. And usually you use professor plus last name. So John Smith would be Professor Smith. Sarah Johnson would be Professor Johnson. Or you could just call them professor. However, there are also many professors who ask the students to simply just use their first name. So, John or Sarah. But honestly, none of this information is important because on your first day of class, your teacher or your professor will tell you what to call them. You don't need to remember any rules. They will introduce themselves to you. They will say, hello, you can call me Professor Smith. Or, hello, some people call me Professor Johnson, but you're welcome to call me Sarah. So just use whatever they ask you to use. Don't use other things because you're probably just going to look weird and make them feel uncomfortable. And that leads us to our second question, which is, what should you call me? And here's the thing. You are not school children, and I am not a school teacher. In fact, most of my followers are older than I am. So we are just adults interacting with each other on social media. So there's no reason for you to use crazy formal language. For example, please don't call me sir. That makes me very uncomfortable. If you want to know why it makes me uncomfortable, please read my post on Facebook from earlier today. So then, if I don't want you to call me sir, how can you be respectful? Well, you respect someone by calling them what they ask you to call them. So the three options I'm going to give you are Mike, because that's my name. And 2, teacher, because in many countries, people call their teacher teacher. We don't usually do that in the United States, but I've never been a teacher in the United States. I have always worked in Thailand with international students, so for me, you calling me teacher, that feels very normal, very comfortable. And finally, my social media name is Teacher Mike, so you can call me Teacher Mike. So there, you have 3 good options. You can call me Mike, Teacher, or Teacher Mike.